Hey everyone, it's the time of favorites! Unfortunately, I'm really bad at those, so we're going to look at all the books I read in 2017. And that is because my reading this year has been different to what I normally read. I started the year off being rather unfocused and discovered that my normal type of books don't work, so I went for a lot of plot-driven books. And yeah, throughout the year I tried to keep up with books, and let's see what I read. I'm not going to go into much detail here. I talked about all of them in wrap-ups or on Goodreads if you want to know more about the books and what I thought about the good things or the bad things. So let's get started according to how I logged them onto Goodreads. I started off 2017 with my longest book of the year, the second book in the Kingkiller Chronicles, and despite it having some slow moments in the middle, I really enjoyed being with Quos again, and I can't wait for the third one. Have you heard that, Patrick Rothfuss? After that, I went for a reread and read Pride and Prejudice, and the more often I read it, the more I like it. Fun fact, I hated it the first few times I had to read it at uni. Adulthood is a Myth is a very relatable comic collection I mainly read because I wanted to give it to a friend and annotate it, which I did. I listened to version control and the audiobook was rather well done, despite the story having some lengths, and I really got lost in the boredom of what was happening a lot. But at the end, the idea of the time travel aspect was rather interesting, that made it worth listening to, but it could have been shorter. I also listened to The Assassins of Altis, and it's part of the Pillars of Reality series, and I really enjoy this series, especially on audiobook. Jane Steele was a surprise read. Everybody had been raving about it at the beginning of the year, and I didn't know what to get into. And it's a retelling of Jane Eyre, but Jane Eyre's character is a murderer. And I really loved it. It's very plot driven, it's very well done, and it was very enjoyable. I can only highly recommend it, and you can even read it without having read Jane Eyre. Home is the second book in the Binti trilogy, and although I liked Binti a lot, I really didn't like Home. I felt it was more trying to achieve something than actually telling us a story. And then I listened to another part of the Pillars of Reality series, as well as another adventure of Harry Dresden, which I kind of enjoy but take my time with. The Noise of Time surprised me. I really liked the cover. I didn't really know it was a story of a really existing man. It was well told, but I had no prior knowledge to the main character, and I forgot his name right now. Jacobi was a fun novel and the beginning of a series of, I think it's magical or mysterious crimes, and it's fun, I enjoyed it. The Slow Regard of Silent Things is a short novella all about one of the characters of the Kingkiller Chronicles, and I loved it. Nothing much happens, but if you really enjoy nothing much happening in a book, then you will enjoy this one, especially if you love the series. The Novus is a debut novel and the first in a series that I'm not going to continue. Despite me enjoying the world and the fantasy setting, I didn't really love the writing that much, and I thought it was rather predictable, and you could end here, so I'm going to do that. Unconventional was a total surprise for me. I really loved reading it because it set me back into going to conventions and organizing it, and even though I haven't gone to comic conventions and things like that, it is the feeling that you have when you organize things, and I loved it. Snow White Sorrow is a rather gritty and dark fairy tale retelling, which I quite enjoyed, but I still need to read the second part. The Butterfly Girl is the second book in a series. Unfortunately, I forgot the main character and who's it about, but it's set in Victorian England, I think, and it's magic, and it's a lot of fun to read with multiple perspectives. Starflight was just a fun space adventure. It reminded me a lot of Firefly, and it has pirates. The Heir Awakens is the first in another series that I'm not going to continue. I really enjoyed the writing and the fantasy aspect and the world, but I didn't really like the main character's representation, especially when she was always like, "Ooh, there's a nice guy. Ooh, there's a nice guy." I didn't like that. There Are Monsters Here is our own book movie guy's first novella, and I really enjoyed it. Go give it a read. Unmentionables is a non-fiction about the Victorian era, sex life and underwear and all of these things that we tend to romanticize in all these steampunk novels. It's fun, go read it. Then I listened to the first installment of Fred the Vampire Accountant, and I love the audiobooks. They are very well done, and there are short stories of short adventures which progress and tell us more about his life. I also listened to The Cellar, which unfortunately I didn't really like. I thought it was very annoying and very American, so yeah, couldn't deal with it. Then I both read and listened to Infinite Jest, which took quite a while, but it was so worth it. I kind of loved it, while not completely understanding everything, but I'm so proud of having read it. After that I felt like short things, so I read two short stories, one by Oscar Wilde and one by Neil Gaiman, which were fun. Unfortunately, I didn't enjoy The Long Way to a Small Angry Planet as well as others did. I didn't really understand the captivating aspect of the story or the characters. I felt like they were all human bashing. Yeah, more details in my review. I also read twice The Gunslinger by Stephen King, once in the beginning of the year where I really didn't get into it and found it rather difficult, and then when I picked it up back in the summer, I flew through it in a day. I don't know what was wrong with me. Listening to the second installment of Fred the Vampire Count was just as much fun as the first one, just as well as the drawing of the three, the second in the Dark Tower series. And since I enjoyed Fred the Vampire Accountant series so much, I also listened to the third book. Unfortunately, the fourth one is not available on audio yet. I DNF'd the audiobook of The Divine Comedy. Not because I don't like The Divine Comedy, but the audiobook was horrible to listen to. I reread The Gargoyle, which we all know I love, I don't need to talk about that. And I DNF'd The Elegance of the Hedgehog because I just couldn't stand the pretentiousness of the characters, and listening to the audiobook was just annoying. The Whispering Muse was a rather short book with a very male gaze, and yeah, I didn't really enjoy it. A Very Private Life was a very interesting fairy tale of a future, and I enjoyed the way it was written and the future world it looked at. I don't think I need to say much about this book. It's okay. I also pushed my way through the third book in the Dark Tower series before taking a break for this year from that series. Listening to Hunted, another book in the Iron Druid series, made me realize I still love the characters, but I think the story ran out. I really enjoyed reading Turtles All the Way Down because I enjoy how John Green writes his characters and the pretentious dialogues they have. The only thing I didn't really enjoy was how Aza's friends ignored her taste in what she wants to do, like how they always wanted her to watch sci-fi when she clearly didn't have any interest in that. The Abyss Surrounds Us disappointed me. I was expecting a sea monster lesbian romance, but unfortunately the romance doesn't start until the second book, and even though the sea monster ideas were really good, the execution wasn't that well. But for a more raving review, I recommend Drums of Autumn's channel. Listening to Emperor Mollusk was just a fun sci-fi novel about the emperor of the world and how he's so smart. It's a fun sci-fi thing. Just as A Long Way Down is the first installment in the Daniel Faust series, I think, and it's magicians, sort of similar to the Harry Dresden Files, so if you like those, you like this too. To the Devil a Diva was rather disappointing. It was split in 3 parts, and I didn't really see the connections and wasn't really interested in a lot of the characters and what was going on, but yeah. It was kind of weird. Becoming a Great Essayist is one of the great courses, and I enjoyed it not for the becoming an essayist part, but learning more about essays. I don't know if it'll help you write essays better. Maybe if you do the exercises, which I didn't. I really enjoyed reading The Ballad of Trenchmouse Taggart because it was a story about mining crisis and weird character jumping a lot of years and looking back through his life. It was fun read, but strange. Listening to The Dispatcher was a blast. I really enjoyed listening to Zachary Quinto read the book and do the voices and embody the character of someone who kills people so they don't die. It makes sense if you read the book. Listening to Soul and the City, another great courses book, was rather boring. Heart of Stone was completely not what I expected. It was a story about a golem going to war, and it's a good story. It's a fantasy story about war, but I expected a romance, so it didn't have a chance. Listening to Zed, a novel about Zelda Fitzgerald, was annoying. I didn't like the voice, the character, anything about it. I cannot recommend it. The Day Before Happiness is a very short book about a young orphan growing up in Naples after the war. It's an interesting coming-of-age story. We Are Legion is a science fiction story about von Neumann drones, and it got boring after a while. I listened to it, the narration was well, but the repetitiveness made me not want to continue with the series. Listening to No Sweat was a very fun thing to do. It's a non-fiction about exercising and motivating yourself to get more exercise. If you want to do the exercises in the book about your own attitudes, I would recommend getting the physical copy. Otherwise, the audiobook was very well done. Just as was The Descent of Man, another non-fiction about toxic masculinity, yeah, I guess that's what we could call it. Serious Man by Manuel Joseph, I enjoyed the writing and some ideas of it, but most of it felt rather long and the story was rather boring. But it is a good debut novel. I finally finished listening to the Aporson series, and yeah, I listened to it and I finished it. The Old Man of the Moon was a story of Shan Fu and the love for his wife, and I really enjoyed it. It's still a short love story. Small Claims by Andrew Kaufman was an interesting look at a man in his midlife crisis and how he tries to find a way to deal with it more successfully or not. Listening to Origins was not a clever choice because I probably didn't understand half of it despite listening to the whole thing. Sourdough is a really fun magical realism book juxtaposing the programmer culture against the artisan culture. Listening to Chris Hadfield read his memoir was entertaining and educational. I really didn't expect this. All Systems Red was a very enjoyable sci-fi read about a socially awkward, serious watching murderbot. Noma was a little bit disappointing. It started off well, it's magical realism, but I kind of got lost in the mystery aspect of the story. I didn't expect that and didn't like it. I finally finished the Birthright trilogy and I was surprised I liked the third book. Artemis didn't live up to its expectations. I listened to it and I think the audiobook was good, but not super good. I would recommend reading the book, but then Lindsay just said reading the book was not so good, so she switched to audio. The Madness Underneath is the second book in the Shades of London series, and I think I'm gonna stop here. I just didn't enjoy where it went. Ninefox Gambit is a very confusing book, a sci-fi story about war, and listening to it was not a good idea. I don't think I understood the voices. I was just confused who was talking all the time. Rereading The Night Circus is always fun, and I read Balzac, the first I've ever read of him, and I can't say I have any opinion about it. So, I don't want to edit this. I hope this didn't take too long. These are all the books I read in 2017. Let me know what you read, or how your reading was. Thank you all for watching this hopefully not too long video. Bye bye!